Okay, so I know that I said that I was not gonna do too many modifications to the Z06. Again, I am probably getting rid of this car to trade up within like a year and a half, somewhere in that time frame. But you know what? Let's have some fun. You know, I feel like I'm watching Nick modify his Camaro ZL1. I'm missing out on all the good stuff and all the fun. So we are gonna do a little build on this car. And I already know some people are gonna be like, oh Mike, that's not really a build, you know? So yes, it's not gonna be the craziest build in the world, but it is gonna be a small, fun build nonetheless. And the first modification is already here. So we got ourselves in the mail today, boys, a Haltech cold air intake system for the Z06. Now, I'm gonna tell you right off the bat, when it comes to cold air intakes, I was always kind of in the camp that said, you know what, they really don't do a whole lot. Unless you get a tune with it, and even then, it doesn't make a world of difference. However, with this Haltech intake, the first version that they ever made and tested on a car, they actually had to tune the car because it was making it run too lean. They didn't have the air to fuel ratios right, and there was some engine knock with it because it was flowing so well. Now, I think that's pretty crazy. They picked up gains of over 50 wheel horsepower with this intake. What they did as a second variation though is you can get either the high flow filter, which requires the tuning, or you can get a synthetic filter, which is what I opted for, that doesn't require the tuning, and the car should run just fine without it. So that's what I got, but either way, I've seen dyno charts. Again, of course, I did research this and look it up and everything. I've seen on the forums rear wheel horsepower gains of like 40 to 45 horsepower with this thing. So to me, that is really impressive. 45 horsepower. Again, I honestly, even seeing the dyno charts and everything, I don't know. I don't know if we're gonna see that. Now, I don't have access to, believe it or not, you know, in my garage, I don't have access here in my garage. Plenty of bookshelves, but I don't have access to a dyno, so I don't know what my car is producing. But because this is just a regular old run-of-the-mill 100% stock Z06, what we can do is just take a baseline dyno number from someone else's car and assume that the power is gonna be just about the same. And then what I will do after we install the intake, which I'm gonna do in a few seconds here, after we install that, I will make an appointment somewhere to get it run on a dyno to see if we made some real good gains. Let's get to it. The way I see it is the first thing we're gonna have to do is remove this, and I already kind of measured out the little bolts. It's a 7mm bolt, and it looks like there's 1, 2, 3, 4 of them, but the fifth one here in the middle is bigger, so we'll have to get a different socket for that. But let's go ahead and just remove this thing first. Next up, we got 2 bolts that hold in the stock filter housing, and these are 10mm as well. Out with the old and soon to be in with the new. This whole job is pretty easy. I'm going as fast as I can here, trying to get all the daylight that I possibly can for this video, even though I know that the video quality is not gonna be as good as normal, unfortunately, but I was too excited not to do this now. But anyway, yeah, again, this was really easy. Came out in about 15 minutes total to do everything. The only difficult part was maneuvering the airbox out of here. You kind of got to jimmy it around a little bit to get around that hood strut again, but really generally pretty easy. Shouldn't take you any longer than 15 minutes. Let's go ahead and get the new one in here. One more quick note here, guys, that I forgot to mention, and this is very important. You have to remove this thing here, this little metal thing, in order for the new system to fit, and that is a 10 millimeter as well. Very important, you have to remove that. I spent about 15 minutes trying to get this thing worked out right. You have to cut this line, you have to do a bunch of stuff in here. So it was just kind of difficult to get everything sorted exactly the way I wanted it, but ultimately it does fit in. I will say about this kit though, because there's no directions, you have to make so many adjustments on your own. You know, it's hard to call this like an easy installation, even though that's what most people would call a cold air intake. I mean, it is easy, like it doesn't require a ton of mechanical knowledge, but it's just very time consuming and you have to do so much, you know, modifying on your own. It's just not the easiest system in the world. I mean, you're doing a lot of different little stuff here, but other than that, you know, not too complicated. Just kind of takes a while till you get everything situated right. But we're gonna go ahead and bolt it in. All right, guys, well, after about an hour and we have officially completely run out of daylight, this system is now totally done. Everything's done except for the fact that I gotta put that rubber thing back on, of course, right there above the radiator, but we're gonna go ahead and fire it up. I'm actually pretty excited. I think it looks pretty good once it's in here. It looks factory, which I like. You know, I don't want something too loud and obnoxious looking, and you know, I think it looks pretty clean. Everything fits okay, and generally I'm pretty happy with how it went. You know, it took about an hour and a half, but I was filming as well, so I think you could probably do this in like 45 minutes if you were just worried about the install itself. But anyway, let's go ahead and fire this bitch up. All right, boys, here we go. Second gear. Woo. Well, I mean, I don't know. The car was fast to begin with. I'm gonna get her up to about 25. 25 miles an hour. I almost hit 30 there. That was fucking nuts. Seriously, you know, I don't know if I can really tell a difference. The difference you can hear, though, for sure, is that whistle. Very audible. As far as power is concerned, the window's up. As far as power is concerned, I don't know. I mean, honestly, I don't want to be one of those guys who put something on their car and like, oh, it's so much faster and I feel it's like a whole new car. I don't know. You know, pulling at the upper RPMs at the very peak, it feels like there might be a little bit more, but probably that's just my mind telling me that it is so, and also because of the increased noise, you know, you have a tendency to kind of think that it's going faster the louder it is. So, I don't know, you know, honestly, can't really say. So let's go ahead and rate this system. Performance-wise, on a scale of 1 to 10, we don't know. Performance-wise, I mean, we have no way of measuring this. I haven't put it on a dyno yet, so we'll have to see there. If the dyno charts are to be believed from other people, performance, I gotta give a 9 out of 10, maybe a 10 out of 10, because, you know, the numbers that it's putting out is like crazy. Without a tune, I've seen numbers as high as 45 wheel horsepower, which is pretty crazy, you know, for just an intake. So performance-wise, probably gotta give it a 10 out of 10, but I will reserve final judgment for when I get my own car on a dyno to see my own independent results. fit and finish and overall quality, this is where I'm gonna have to give Haltech a pretty low score here, unfortunately. You know, the material quality is okay, but the fitment isn't great. You have to do so much modifying on your own and so many little tweaks and all this stuff, and it isn't right. The design wasn't right from the beginning, and rather than fix the main basic design, they just did a bunch of little fixes. You know, oh, you have to lengthen this hose and do this, this, and this. For instance, if they just would have moved the mass airflow sensor on the tube to a different location, because there's plenty of slack in the wires, in the wiring harness for the mass airflow sensor in this car, they could have avoided a lot of those issues where you have to lengthen tubes and all this other stuff. So quality, I'd have to give like a 4 out of 10, maybe even a 3 out of 10 overall. It just really sucks. The install was shitty. It should be a lot easier. There's a lot of design flaws to begin with. There's a lot of Band-Aid fixes. It just isn't worth, it's not even close to being worth 550 bucks. That's all it is. The development and the perfection is not there to charge that premium price. Let's talk about the price and value for a second. You know, 550 bucks is a lot of money. Now, some of that is the Corvette tax, so to speak, where if this was the same system for a Camaro, it'd probably be like 400 bucks. But even still, that's a ton of money. And especially going back to what I said about fit and finish issues and all that. Give an example, you know, the lift kit on my truck, right? The entire lift kit. So we're talking a lot of different pieces. The install was easy, went exactly as the instructions said. Everything went together well. The look was great. The quality was great. Everything was awesome. And that whole thing was 1,200 bucks. $600 is like the premium absolute price. Maybe if it was 100% perfect, like it looked great, you know, install was easy, you know, everything was perfect, maybe 600 bucks. But even then, I feel like this should be a $300 system at the most. If it was perfect, I'm gonna say, you know, maybe it was worth 400 bucks. But for this particular system, this Haltech system, with the way everything went together, I'm gonna say this should have been a $300 item at the most. So value, I gotta give it like a 5 out of 10. You know, it's just not that great. Now, the one saving grace here is that the only other intakes available for this are still like 400 or 500 bucks, and this one, from what I've seen, offers the best performance. So the only saving grace is that. So maybe I'll give it like a 6 or 7 out of 10, just because for the money it should offer the best performance. But when you consider all those other things, I mean, I can't give it that great of a rating. All right, so let's end the video on a little bit more of a positive note. The one thing I can say is that the intake noise is fantastic coming from this thing. I love that. Now, you still can't hear the supercharger all that much, but I don't think that's the intake's fault, obviously. I think that this is just a smaller supercharger. It's not like the Hellcat where you're gonna hear it all the time. If I take this to the dyno and it ends up making like 50 more horsepower than it did, I'll probably change my tune a little bit, but for now, my overall rating of the system would be a 7 out of 10. I'm pretty happy with it. I think it's gonna be good performance-wise. It feels maybe a little bit faster. It looks okay. I just wish some other little things were a little bit better. But anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you're stopping in for the first time, please subscribe. Take care. Have a great day.